I've come from British Columbia, where we have a fair amount of background with outrageous bark beetle outbreaks, predominantly the mountain pine beetle outbreak. I'm hearing the word unprecedented a lot in California, and probably one of the reasons California hasn't experienced these really massive outbreaks before is you have very mixed conifer species in your forest here, so lots of different kinds of species, and you have very complex terrain. Western pine beetles attacking your ponderosa pine and your coulter pine. You've got mountain pine beetle more likely than western pine beetle attacking your sugar pine. You've got Jeffrey pine beetle attacking your Jeffrey pine. So these are all different species of beetle that are co-evolved to attack different species of trees. And so what you have is this condition of very warm winters, which makes it so your beetles are surviving the winter really well. So they are hibernating during the winter. You know, they go dormant, they kind of diapause. They just hang out under the bark over the winter time, but these nice warm temperatures that are increasingly being experienced in the winter make it so a lot of those beetles survive. They re-emerge the next spring, and they start their life cycle over, where they re-emerge and they're looking for new green trees to attack. And you know, in these stands, you know, you'll have maybe 3 or 4 ponderosas that are attacked. They come out and they go, oh, there's some more ponderosa, and then they just mass attack it. And usually what these trees do is they spit them out. They just produce tons of resin and sap, and they just pour it out, and you can see under sort of a non-droughty condition all these pitch tubes, and those are the beetles actually being ejected by the tree. Under these drought conditions, trees cannot allocate that kind of resources to sap flow. They're just hanging on, trying to survive. And so it becomes a double-edged sword in a way. You have really good winter survival, and you have trees that are kind of sitting ducks because they can't evoke the normal response that they would to defend themselves. And so your population just keeps increasing and increasing. In western pine beetle, you tend to have around 2 generations of beetles created a year in the central and northern parts of the Sierra. In the southern parts of the Sierra, and I'm not sure exactly where the line is because I'm so new to the state, you have 4 generations of beetle produced a year. This is a really high population. So even if we were to start to see the drought abate, you're going to see bark beetle mortality persist for a number of years still, because they're not going to immediately respond. You know, the trees aren't going to immediately be able to respond. There's going to be this lag effect from the drought ending to the trees regaining some sort of natural vigor. The best you can hope for with direct control mechanisms, either injecting insecticides, which research really still needs to bear out whether that's truly effective, or using anti-aggregation pheromones. So this is mimics a chemical the beetle produces that says, tree's full, go away guys. These are really at a small scale that you can evoke these types of measures. So this is individual tree protection. And in some areas of California, this is a lost battle already, but where you have low numbers of beetles, so just where your beetles are starting to increase in population, you can make a dent in that population by cutting down the trees that are still green, but they're full of beetle. When they're full of beetle, even if their crown is green, they're dead. The tree just doesn't know it yet. So, for example, where we were watching the tree being felled today with the crane, in the foreground of that excluded area, and I couldn't verify this because we weren't supposed to go over the barrier, but there was a standing green tree that looked to me like it was mass attacked. That's going to be a dead tree next year. If we could remove that tree at the same time, because there's ways of verifying that these are mass attack trees, then this might help with some of the multiple passes we're having to make through these areas. Also in these areas with less tree mortality by bark beetles, so where you're not having 85% of the trees wiped out, you might actually reduce the beetle population by a really active sanitation program. And that's removing those trees while the beetles are overwintering and getting them out of the woods. The beetles are destroyed when you debark the trees, and you're effectively removing, you know, thousands and thousands of beetles from re-emerging and attacking new trees the next year. We're going to be working hard this winter to sort of develop an extension program around proactive management, helping people learn about the different tools and the different exemption processes they can evoke to sort of try to manage the trees that are kind of sitting ducks that are either green and dead or going to be dead in the future.